What is good, everybody, man? Welcome into the Bluebloods official podcast of FCS Football Central. Myself, my guy, Coach Fred. We finally got back. We took a little break. We were back earlier this week, did a whole we just tried to catch up, man. We talked about SWAC tiers. We talked about, I mean, man, we went down the rabbit hole on 7-on-7s, offensive line development. We went everywhere. And that show could be today. Listen, man, we've started getting the habit of Coach picking out these topics and talking about something completely different. So just tune in and find out where the show goes today. But man, Coach, how we feeling on this Saturday morning?
Man, beautiful morning, not too hot, but it's gonna get hot. Uh Finish this up, man. Think I'm gonna go and hit some golf balls on the range and thought I'd get ready right now. Hydrate up, have a good time, smoke a cig or two, see how bad my golf shot is, and call it an afternoon.
I like it. We kind of have the same idea. I think I'm hitting the driving range today. And then there's a course down here in Mobile, Magnolia Grove, that has one of the best par 3 courses in the country.
Oh,
Might
really?
go, yeah, might go check out the par 3 course, but maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know about today. I'll probably hit the range today and go. I've been trying to get back into golf, man. I played in high school, but man, you know how it is, Coach. I went to college, and there's a lot more fun stuff going on than going to hit golf balls in college. And listen, you know how it is. Those dorms aren't big enough, man. Like we had to consolidate space, and I didn't feel like bringing my clubs up here, so I got out of the habit when I was in like undergrad. But um,
We
I,
should do a Blue Bloods golf tournament, man.
we should, because I think enough people in the space. I want to say Josh goes out there and golfs, Banks golfs, Scotty golfs. Like I think we got enough people that like play golf
What's
to
up?
have this.
What's up?
We'll
We talking about WrestleMania. Let's go.
I,
What y'all want to do?
it was funny because Kobe tried to put, no, it was Kobe or Scotty, one of the two, put together like a they wanted to do a like media combine for all the media people with like 40-yard dashes and everything like that. But
Oh,
we
Blue
should just
Bloods
do.
winning that. We're winning that one.
But maybe like the bench press, but I'm the only. It was unfair, man, because I'm the only person that played offensive line in the entire group. Everybody
We
else
got
played
it.
wide receiver and running back and
You
corner.
don't get judged in the 40. You're in the
I
10.
know,
Oh, we
I
winning
know.
that.
Yeah, we'll do a team 40 for the blue. Now, if we did all the FCS media, that's a different conversation. I think we're taking that one.
Oh,
That
no
one might
doubt.
be a wrap. We'll have to get our guys from Hack City on after they called us out
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
fight. That was crazy in the wrestling match. But man, we're going to talk a few topics today, man. We're going to talk about how the new 16 seed format would potentially have impacted past FCS playoffs. We're going to talk biggest question marks for every SWAC and MEAC team. And if you guys remember last year, I did a bold takes episode where I allowed you guys to submit your boldest takes on the 2024 season. We're bringing that episode back. It will be either next week or the week after. So stay tuned for the post on the community page, our social media accounts, everywhere. We're going to try to get as many bold takes as we can, and me and Coach are going to grade them on
Ooh,
the show like we did last year. That was
ooh.
probably one of our most popular all season shows last year. So we're bringing it back. But Coach, we have someone who submitted one early. So that's our last topic. And guys, I'm just going to give y'all a preview so y'all can think on it and put your thoughts in the chat. The bold take was the SWAC has been the more talented team every year in the Celebration Bowl, and the only reason the teams have lost is bad coaching.
I
Me,
disagree.
yeah, well, we'll get to that though, Coach. This whole like we'll end the show on that, but I wanted the chat, everyone listening, to kind of think on that. The bold take of the day was the SWAC has only lost the Celebration Bowls because of bad coaching. Now, just to give y'all a recap, MEAC 6-2. The only teams that have won it is FAM and Grambling. So you're talking about A&T over Alcorn in 15. You're talking about A&T over Grambling in 17. A&T over Alcorn in 18 and 19, South Carolina State over Jackson in 2021, and Central over Jackson in 2022. So y'all think on that. We're going to get back to it at the end of the show. Coach, this topic probably won't take super, super long, but Stan Becton, NCAA.com, he wanted to see how this new seeding format in the playoffs would have affected former or past FCS playoffs. So the new format, Coach, is the top 16 teams are seeded now rather than just the top 8, which means the team that's the higher seed gets to host the playoff game now in the first round rather than who just bids the most money, which is good. I kind of like it. I think it's a good change. It's a step forward. So the reason this changes a lot, coaches, there's some teams, and we've talked about how important home field advantage is. You look at Furman losing home field advantage late last season, having to go to Montana rather than vice versa. Coach, looking at last year, before we get into the previous 2 years, just to give you, so the top 8 seeds stay exactly the same. So you still got South Dakota State, Nova, Albany, Idaho, South Dakota, Montana State, Furman, and Montana. But I think the seeding changes a lot because I think this is a team, specifically North Carolina Central. They're the 16 seed in this format, which means instead of going to Richmond, they get to host Gardner-Webb.
At the house.
But here's the negative. They're the 16 seed. So instead of potentially going to play Albany in the second round, they go and play South Dakota State in the second round. So I don't just the conversation was, would this change the national champion? Before we get into, some of how some of the first round matchups change, I don't think it mattered how you seeded it. Last year, South Dakota State was going to win the national championship. They were the best team all year long. And there was no conversation, I think, at any point that there was a team that could even compete. Coach, me and you covered the entire season, every single week, talked about so many games. There was never a week where I felt like South Dakota State was in jeopardy.
No, unless it was going to be a significant injury to somebody that was, key, the quarterback, left tackle. I think they even could have survived with the running back going down. Unless something like that happened, I don't think it was going to change. And they were just a machine. They could have competed in a lot of FBS conferences. To be honest with you, they were just a machine.
Yeah, I'm with you. We talked a little bit about it beforehand. Let me ask you real quick, and this is one of these tangents. I don't know if you saw it. I don't know why we didn't hit it on the show. Did you see Clifton McDowell post on social media that his injury is the only reason Montana didn't win the national title?
Yeah, I didn't understand that part. He clearly was not at the same game that I was at. Now, could he have made it interesting? I think so. But, if you go back, if you think about it, we said it before, something happened to him well before that game because his game changed.
Agreed.
He was on the down, I won't say down, but he wasn't the same kid that was at Idaho the later they got going. So I think, at that point, even if he's at his best, there's no way. There's no way.
I like the confidence. I wouldn't expect anything less from him to say that. But I was there. Coach, me and you were on the sideline watching that game up close.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was as close as it ended up being. Like, I do think Montana's defense played well, but also, I mean, if you want to talk injuries, Isaiah Davis in the second half, major concussion, limited. Then Mark Gronowski throws the most boneheaded interception that he probably has in 3 seasons. That wasn't a good play by Montana. That I don't know where he was throwing it at that time. And also, too, Montana made some mistakes. That red zone drive, if you're Eli Gilman, you can't get stuffed at the goal line like that.
No, you got to score that. And then the only other chance they would have had would have been every time the champ scored, when they kicked off, they kicked it to that guy.
Yeah, they kicked it to 5.
Listen, that's the only chance, to go back and forth because, at the end of the day, you had chances early to make it interesting, and then they just flex their muscles, stops you at the finish line. I think they could have survived in CUSA. They could have survived in some other conferences as well. Every now and then, you get a team like that, man, top to bottom, to where, okay, it's not superstar laden, but they are just a solid freaking team, and that's what those guys were last year.
Coach, I'll say this. I don't see any changes in the top half of the bracket. That's the Villanova, South Dakota State part of the bracket, that very top part. You had Central hosting Gardner-Webb. I think Central probably gets that win looking back, especially if Davius Richards stays healthy. But that's a
Dropping out,
much, yeah, I think that's a win for them. Austin P Chattanooga, I don't see any change there. Those teams actually played. So I think it's kind of hard to write revisionist history when those teams played in real life. I think it still winds up South Dakota State, Villanova in the quarters. I don't see any changes there.
The only problem and it's not a problem. I mean, it is what it is. But for schools, and I'll use Coach Oliver's team. You play in a different climate, and then you automatically know, that second round that you're going to go and play in a totally different climate that you are not, accustomed to playing. And I think that's where the home field advantage, I think that's where all that stuff, like we're saying, at the top half of the bracket, I think that's where it comes into play. But a lot of those teams kind of play the same element. But when you're talking about those dome teams, the Idahos, the NDSUs, when they have to go outside, man, that's real.
That is a fact. I just don't listen. I loved Central last year. I was high on them. They had no chance of beating South Dakota State on the road. It wouldn't even been close, in my opinion.
I don't fight or not.
Yeah, I don't think Austin P or Chattanooga had a chance against Villanova last year with how balanced, and that team was playing really well in the playoffs. Like people forget how
Austin
good
P did though. I thought they would have had an opportunity, just because they could score points.
Yeah, possibly, but they did lose to Chattanooga like last year. They lost in the first round, so it was kind of tough to say that they would have competed with Villanova when they couldn't get out the first round. I will say the second half. This is the U Albany, Idaho region. North Dakota plays Drake. Not even a close game. Drake, Pioneer League team. I mean, they would have scored 60 on them. But I think Richmond Mercer would have been a very, very interesting matchup there at the 13 seed. I lean Richmond, but I think Mercer would have given them a pretty good run for their money. Now, I'll say this. I don't think North Dakota goes on and beats UAlbany last year. And I don't think the winner of Richmond Mercer would have been an interesting game with Idaho, but I still think we wind up with Idaho UAlbany in the quarters.
It's just because we saw two different Mercer teams.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Which one shows up on that Saturday? I think
you would have liked to see Ty James go up against that Idaho secondary. That would have been such a good matchup
in the dome. No element. I mean, 75 and comfortable. Oh man, that'd have been good. That'd have been good to see.
Now, this is where the conversation gets interesting because we obviously know the South Dakota Montana State region. It gets iffy because South Dakota gets knocked out in the quarters by North Dakota State, and Montana State gets knocked out in the second round by North Dakota State. Well, now North Dakota State's not in this region. So how far do these two teams go? You have Southern Illinois and Nichols, who played. Southern Illinois beat them 35-0. So I'm giving Southern Illinois the win there. Does Southern Illinois, do the Salukis give South Dakota a run? Probably not. But I think that offense being so explosive could have created some problems for a South Dakota offense that wasn't super high powered. So if the Salukis go in there and put up 28 points, do you trust South Dakota to get to 28? That'd be the question for me. And then Delaware, Youngstown State, probably give it to Delaware. I think Montana State beats Delaware at home in the second round.
And then to go back to the Salukis. Remember, we said all year for them it was a race to that point total. Who could get there first? And if they got there first, you were pretty much in trouble. So, if they could get there and get to that point total, I think that would have been good. I like the guessing game, but as we saw throughout the year, it just depends. There's certain teams that are going to show up every week. And then I think the lower half of the bracket, 8 on down, it depends on what team shows up.
That's true. I'll say this. If I had to put my money on it right now, with the way this bracket lays out with this new seeding, I think Montana State gets out of this region and they get to the semis.
Get an opportunity. Yeah.
And I think at the bottom, this is where it gets real interesting because this bracket has about 3 or 4 games that would have been so fun to watch. In the first round, you get North Dakota State versus Sac State, which would have been a hell of a game with Caden Bennett coming back from injury.
I said if he would have been 100%, that would definitely been. Good to
And
see.
then
That'd have been great to see.
the winner of that game goes on to play Furman in Greensville. So that would have been a great game. And then the bottom, you get Lafayette and Duquesne. I think Lafayette wins, but Lafayette going to Montana. But then you can the interesting thing is you probably get that Montana North Dakota State matchup in the quarters now rather than the semifinals, which sets up a potential matchup in the semis. Montana State to go to the national title, which would have been the most electric game of the season last year.
And that play and if that game would have been anything like the game that they played to get to the national championship game versus the NDSU, I would have paid money to be in the press box to watch that one. Not on the field, but in the press box to watch that one.
Bro, I could have got you a jacket. It would have been fine. It would have been fine.
Bro,
You know,
that looks so cold.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So in 2022, coach, obviously another South Dakota State national title. I don't know if anyone knocks them off, but I do think there's some interesting changes here where, you got the top 8 seeds that stay the same. That year you had South Dakota State at 1, Sac State 2, North Dakota State 3, Montana State 4, William and Mary 5, Sanford at 6, UIW at 7, Holy Cross at 8. But I'll say this, the interesting thing here is UIW would have had a much more brutal road because they would have had to face the winner of Furman Gardner Webb, which they only beat Furman by 3 that year in the second round. Then on the other side of the bracket, you would have had Southeastern Louisiana hosting Montana. Montana probably gets that one. And then Montana plays Sac State. And then so UIW would have had to go through Furman, Montana or Sac State, North Dakota State, and then face the winner of the national title.
And I think, some roads would have been made easier, but then after the first round to the second round, to your point, I think that's where the Southeasterns, I think that's where the real problem starts to come in for those guys.
Yeah,
would have come in.
I don't see any changes. I mean, the first round matchups you would have had Southeastern Louisiana, Montana, Furman Gardner Webb, New Hampshire, St. Francis, Delaware, Fordham, SEMO, Richmond. I think SEMO would have been helped because SEMO had to go to Montana and almost knocked off Montana, except they kicked the Junior Bergen.
Yep, and again, that will be
why would you do that? I know it's like the same old conversation there.
That's one of the mysteries that just don't
an interesting game
understand.
Would have been that Weber State Idaho game. So Idaho ended up losing to Southeastern Louisiana that year, and Weber State had to I want to say they beat North Dakota in the first round, but instead of in the second round having a tough matchup, they would have went to Holy Cross, and that Holy Cross Weber game would have been extremely interesting with Saluka and all those guys.
Oh yeah, because Holy Cross was rolling. He had those guys playing pretty good. But that was one of those teams again that started out really, really hot, and injury here and there kind of slowed him up. Where did he land?
UNLV with Hodge Malik Williams from Campbell at the same position. But anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds of that. The last one, Coach, before we move on, so we don't spend too much time on this topic. In 2021, which was that North Dakota State year where they win the title, God, this one, Coach, this was so tough because I still think that there's a chance that Montana State or South Dakota State could find a way to get this. This would be the year that someone would knock off the defending champ. The question would be, because here's South Dakota State's path, Coach. In the first round, they would host Stephen F. Austin. I don't think anyone's projecting them to lose that game. Then in the second round, they'd play Sac State.
Exactly.
They would win that one. Then they would probably projecting out. They would probably face Villanova there. I think they probably get Villanova. They would have to travel to Villanova though, just by the way. And then looking on the other side of the bracket, based on how it played out in real life, Montana State would probably beat Sam Houston, I would imagine, that year.
Yeah.
And the question would come down to, could they get past Montana State? And you
Oh,
remember, this was the year that Mark Gronowski was hurt. So Mark Gronowski is not the starting quarterback. They had Chris Ola Duncan.
right. I think that, and it's hard to say, but I think at that point, the guys with the collar shirt doesn't put him. They don't put him in predicament to drop the ball game, so to speak, to give it away. So I got to have confidence that they come up with a game plan to where he's comfortable uh, within it, not putting the ball at harm's way. So I got to say they have that one. I got to give that one.
So Stan's prediction was, so in the first round you would have Eastern Washington versus South Dakota. This was when Eastern Washington had Eric Barrier, and he said that Eastern Washington would upset Montana State in the second round, which means if that happens, South Dakota State would not be playing Montana State in the quarters, which I think changes the whole conversation.
Barrier was a bad man, no doubt about it. Um, that's foreseeable. I can see that happening, but
the other thing is, I don't think the bottom of the bracket changes. You probably still, whatever iteration you want to do, is probably James Madison, North Dakota State in the semis, or the quarters. Whatever. Like I don't see anyone knocking either of those teams off that year. The interesting thing though is, if you remember, this was the year that FAM went to the playoffs.
I was just going to say, where would they figure in? Because they started at Southeastern.
Yeah, they would have traveled to Kennesaw State that year.
That's doable.
That triple option was so nasty that year. That's the year they had the All-American quarterback. But I do think
FAM had a pretty decent defense.
Yeah, FAM's defense would have been built better to stop him than they were Cole Kelly, I believe. So if they win that game, then they travel to ETSU, who had the best running back in the country that year, Quay Holmes, who, well, I mean, I want to see, probably had almost 2,000 total yards that year. He finished third for the Walter Payton behind. That would have been a really good matchup. ETSU had a really, really good team. I'm trying to pull up his stats.
That would have been a good matchup because Sam had the starting free safety for the Dallas Cowboys that year as well. So that would have been a very, very good matchup.
So that year, Holmes was the SoCon Offensive Player of the Year, third in the Walter Payton. He had over 1,500 rushing yards, averaged over 120 per game, and had 20 total touchdowns.
That Musa kept it in the middle of the road.
Well, no,
it wasn't Musa. It wasn't Musa.
It was McKay. McKay.
Yeah.
Could McKay have kept him in that game? And then if they somehow find a way to win those first two games, which I don't think would have happened, they would have had to travel to North Dakota State and all roads in the Fargo Dome for that FAMU team. It wouldn't even have been worth watching at that point.
But those would have been two winnable games for FAMU, though. To be honest,
I think it would have been more winnable than them getting Cole Kelly in South. It was just such a bad matchup, man, because FAM's defense was good. But Coach, let's just be honest, you were in the SWAC that year. There was not a quarterback that was 1/3 of the quarterback that Cole Kelly was that year.
No, and FAM went into that game with a lot of I don't want to say built up expectations, but if you remember the hoopla surrounding that whole scenario about the playoff deal, so they didn't help themselves.
No, I don't think that was probably one of the worst matchups, because I'm thinking of quarterbacks in that year in the SWAC. I mean, maybe you can argue Akil Glass was there, but he had no help surrounding him at all. And then that was Shador's freshman year. True freshman Shador was not on that level.
No.
And then Felix is a different type of quarterback than Kelly. Like, it was just that there was not a 6'5", 260 quarterback that could run and pass like that.
No,
it was just it's so. He was such a unique player to stop, because I want to say he had like 20 rushing touchdowns that year too.
Yeah, it was a different. I mean, he was a different beast, ain't no doubt about it. And within the conference, as I'm thinking, uh, Shador was, I think, maybe 1A with
Yeah.
with them, with Glass, whatever, and they weren't. I don't think at that
And,
point
and
they were
ne-
close to that.
neither one of them was mobile at all.
No, not like that kid. No, and that
No,
wasn't Felix's game either. You know,
no. Felix was athletic, but you guys weren't running quarterback power with Felix Harper,
heck no.
especially at his size too. That would have just been asking for an injury. But man, let's shift to this. The biggest question mark for each SWAC and MEAC team entering 2024, coach. So this could be a positional unit. This could be a side of the ball. This could be a coaching question mark. It could be anything you want. But when I say these teams' names, I just want you to give me the first thing that comes to mind as the biggest question mark entering next season, man. We'll start over in the MEAC. We're going to start here, Delaware State.
Who are they? Um, can they pull off a win? And I just think it's more of an identity thing. And I won't go too far in, but we've kind of talked about this before. Are they going to play to what they have in the building, or are they going to try to do something that they don't have the complete talent base for doing? So that's going to be interesting.
I think it's culture for me. And the reason I say culture, and I like what Pear said, is kind of everything. I guess culture kind of encompasses everything. But, coach, there was a lot of talk that the players were not buying into his system, whole system. There was a lot of talk about players hitting the portal. There was, I
I
mean,
hate that.
it was bad. I mean,
I hate that.
and like Dave said, no Division One or Division Two wins for Delaware State last year.
Yeah, it's tough sledding. Ain't no doubt.
I mean, I don't know where the culture is, and we'll see what like Marquis Adams does. He was a freshman All-American quarterback. They have some talent coming back, but coach, man, there's just so many question marks that you just can't pick one. Their offense scored less than 18 points per game last year, coach. Their defense allowed almost 40. What's like? Where are we going with this program? Because if they go into this year, coach, and they end up winless, or they end up with no Division One wins again, where does this program like? What's the trajectory of this program going into 2025?
But that's where I go. You've got to find something, and we'll take it back to high school. The 4 or 5 wide is great, but if all you have is wing T talent, you've got to
Mm,
run the wing T. And I think
yeah.
right now, they want to keep up with what's going on in college football, but you've got to do something that's going to grind out a win, or that's going to grind out getting you an opportunity to get into the fourth quarter with the opportunity. I watched them play a couple times last year, and it was just like gloomy night game, cold. Like, bro, you got to do something. You've got to do something to give yourself an opportunity. Kind of like Paris said, like you said, I mean, it's everything, but you've got to take something out of that barrel of everything and say, this is what we're going to hang our hat.
Let's shift here. Norfolk State, and I'll start here. Quarterback. I think it's quarterback. And now you could go defense. Their defense was young last year, coach. They started a lot of young talent at all three levels. And I think there were some growing pains at times, but it's quarterback to me because when you look at when Odoms was best, like yes, he runs the football. He always kind of had a playmaker at quarterback that he could trust. Especially that first year at Norfolk when he came over. I just I don't know. I don't know what the I guess projection for this program is they don't find a quarterback because the rumor on the street is that Coons is gone. Otto Coons, who was the starter last year, and that he's just not with the program right now. No one knows really what happened with him. If that's the case, who do they turn to? Are they confident? I want to say they played like 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the spring game, coach.
Trying to find that one.
I, if they can't, and I listen, I understand the question marks surrounding quarterback play in the MEAC next year because let's be honest, there's a lot of question marks. But if they don't find the proper signal caller, I don't think they have a shot at competing for the MEAC title with how talented some of those top teams are.
Yeah, and shout out to my boy JP who comes over there as the new OC. So, I think quarterback has got to be a deal as well. But, they lost a lot in the portal. So, the question for me is, I'm sure the seat's getting hot. How do they handle the pressure? And I think the week 0 game,
Oh, huge.
huge, huge.
Because even if they don't win, coach, you can't
It's got to
get
be.
beat.
You can't get boat race.
Not like South Carolina State did last year, because that's what set Buddy Pugh's last year into a tailspin, is getting beat like they did against Jackson.
Helplessly.
Now, I will say the favorite without Coons, and I was getting there, Jordan, so I appreciate you putting in the chat, is they got that kid from FAMU, coach. If you remember, the Cameron Sapp out of Jacksonville, 6'2", 205, athletic, got the arm on him. Can he develop? And listen, I've heard from Coach KJ Black, Coach Willie's talked good about this kid. There's a lot of people who have hyped him up. Is this his time finally to step into that QB1 role and go ball out? He's got to.
If it is his, I think they lost, and I could be wrong, but I think they lost 3 of the 5 starters up front to protect him.
Now
So
they do return a freshman All-American at tackle. He's really, really good. They got like 2 freshman guys that played a lot last year that come back, but they got a lot of question marks along the offensive line, I think. And that's a huge part of Odom's, coach. You've coached against them. Odom's could put together some offensive lines.
and they lost their O-line coach as well.
Yeah.
So that's the question mark for me up front.
Now, this is going to be an interesting one. South Carolina State. First year head coach, Chennis Berry. Coach, I'm going to throw it here. I'm going to say defense. And I know that sounds so crazy. That sounds insane for me to say South Carolina State has a question mark defensively. But, Coach, they lost a majority of their starting talent. On the defense, they return a whole lot of talent offensively. And then they go land an experienced quarterback in that system with Eric Phoenix. But they got a lot of question marks on all 3 levels of that defense. And Coach, I know they had talent last year defensively. That talent last year's South Carolina State defense was arguably one of the worst South Carolina State defenses we've seen in a while. That wasn't the identity that we kind of are accustomed to seeing with South Carolina State. If they don't turn that around, I don't know if South Carolina State is as good as even I think they can be, because I've been pretty high on them, but they're definitely not living up to the hype that some people are putting on them in terms of potential contenders in this conference.
Well, that's going to be the question mark for me for them, because they lost so much defensively from a team that wasn't very good defensively, and now you bring in a completely different system. Who knows what they've fully gotten in the recruiting circle, and how quickly will they be able to pick up the system that's being put in now, with the new defensive coordinator. So for me, I'm kind of like you defensively. Who are they, and what are they going to be like up front? Because and I know for that conference, you've got to be able to hold up in that box.
Yeah, and they lost 2 guys who went to the Legacy Bowl and looked good. Godbold and Jablonski, those guys are ballers. So I'm with you there. Let's go here. Morgan State. Coach, can we just say it on 3 together? 1, 2, 3 offense.
Offensively, can they score 14 points?
There's no, there's not even a conversation to have here. It's offense, 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 quarterback, running back, offensive line, wide receiver. It's everything for Morgan. Just if I'm Morgan, coach, I'm tearing up the offensive offices, building new ones just in case. Maybe we got to get the bad juju out. I mean, coach, last year their defense ranked first in like every statistical category you could. Coach, they allowed less than 5 yards per play last year and 10 less defensive touchdowns than the second closest defense in the conference. and they had a losing record.
You can't. I mean, old football days, you could win games like that. New football era, you can't win like that. You've got to. It's got to be a race again, and we talked about this with other teams. They've got to have the mindset that it's got to be a race to 24. If they can get to 24, they win. But they got to get to 24 first, because if somebody else gets to 24 before that, it's done.
As an offensive coach, let me ask you, because me and Timothy have been on this kick, and we're slowly trying to change the culture of media and what statistics we use to judge offenses and defenses. Coach, if you had to pick, and also for Timothy, like, he's kind of got me on this thing. Timothy's a stats guy. I love statistics. That was my favorite course in graduate school. Timothy's argument is average yards per game doesn't tell the whole story about how good an offense was. It should be average yards per play. Because teams that have a slower pace and run less plays are going to average less yards per game. And that becomes an outlier. For you as a coach, if you're building your offense this year at Alcorn, what are the goals in terms of yards per play and yards per game for your offense? Where's the cutoff for we had a good offensive season or we had a bad offensive season?
I'm going to stay with Morgan because now you've got me thinking about them. I'm going to stay with Morgan with the same question.
Okay, that's fine.
If they can somehow look up at the end of the game and have 300 plus yards, I think they'll feel pretty good about the outcome. So they've got to get to 300, whether that's, as balanced as you can be or, one-sided. It doesn't matter. And I think they have got to own the time of possession. I think the time of possession, if you're not a high-flying offense, I think the time of possession tells the story of the game more so than any other stat. Because now, Tom Osborne of old, we can get up 10 and take the air off the football.
Yeah.
So time of possession, for me, if I'm at Morgan, I'm thinking the biggest stat at the end of the day, we've got to be able to win time of possession, and we've got to get to 300 by any means necessary, whether that's throwing the ball, running the ball, whatever it takes. If we get to 300, the end of the game, the scoreboard is going to be in our favor.
I'm trying to think. Do you know how many?
Because we're not giving up 300.
Do you know how many touchdowns you guys scored last year?
I don't.
Okay, I'm looking here. 30.
I was going to say it wasn't a lot.
It was 30, but I mean, so 30 is pretty average for you, right? I mean, that you would like to see more, but that's a decent season.
See more. We went games where we scored 1 Southern Miss. I think we scored 2 PV.
Scored a lot against Southern.
A lot against Southern. A lot against the school up the street. Not enough versus Texas Southern.
Yeah,
so
that was. I mean, I'm just trying to put it in perspective. Morgan had 16 offensive touchdowns last year.
Yeah, that ain't gonna get it done.
And they averaged 250 yards per game and less than 4 yards per play.
Got to get to 5, and I think you've got to have those explosives in there for them.
Agreed.
What was that score with them with Delaware? Do you have that up front?
With Delaware State?
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull it up real quick. I got you. Let me pull this up. I want to say, but I'm about to go through their schedule with you, man, because I'm looking at this now and I'm just sick at some of these games I'm seeing. They beat Delaware State 24-17.
Real life shootout.
He said that's a shootout. I mean, I'm looking here. So they scored 2.
And who does not to cut you off? I figured out a way to put the chat up so that I can kind of see and you know. But Miss Paris, who does Miss Paris represent?
Jackson. She's Jackson through and through, man. She's gonna call you on that Jackson slander. She's gonna call you on it. So, Coach, I'm looking here at their schedule. I just want to put in perspective how close this Morgan, and we're spending way too much time on Morgan here, but
I know. My bad.
so they beat Richmond on the road, huge win. They lose by 3 to Akron.
Yep.
10 against Townsend. They lost 20-10. They lose to Albany, who was in the semifinals, by 6 in overtime. Their only blowout loss of the season was to Yale, 45-3. But those Ivy League teams are not a conference, bro. They turn it on. I don't know how it happens. Their homecoming got canceled because if you remember, Stony Brook had the shooting on camp, or no, Morgan had the shooting on campus. Yeah, and they had to cancel that one. They lose to Central by 6. They beat Norfolk, they beat Delaware, beat South Carolina State. Then they lose to Howard on the road by 7, 14-7. They held Howard to 14 points and lost that game.
Yeah.
It's coach, as an offensive coach, you dreading that walk back to the locker room. If your if Coach T allowed 14 points against the champs of the conference and you guys only got 7 on the board, you don't want to go back to the offices.
Man, that's a long bus ride home.
Yeah.
That's a long bus ride. That's a long offensive bus ride home.
Yeah, that's when you're like, Coach, I'm just gonna go ahead and call an Uber, man. I'm good. I don't want to ride with the team.
And if it's a home game, it ain't no tailgating. It's right to the car and gone.
Yeah. Let's go here, Coach. North Carolina Central, and I think this is it's almost like a cheat. I hate picking quarterback because it's so obvious that it matters, but man, it's so tough to replace a legend. And Coach, we've seen it like Akil Glass. I mean, even I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be mean.
No, Felix Harper's that fall off is real. No, that fall off is real.
I think even Jackson. Jason Brown compared to Shedeur Sanders, it was a steep drop off, and
that fall off is real.
Yeah. So I just there's so much evidence that it's just hard, and I don't even remember who the quarterback was. Who was the quarterback after Kincaid?
Oh man, they had a couple.
I can picture him, and I don't know why his name's not clicking for me. But or even Coach Eastern Washington. After Barrier left, they still haven't really found that guy. Cole Kelly leaving Southeastern, still haven't really found that guy. Hickbottom, that's who it was. Yes, because I was picturing him because I was like, he went to another school because he went to Tennessee State, and he was at the he was at the Legacy Bowl. I got to talk to him. Great guy, by the way, too. I like Hickbottom, but didn't really work out at Grambling to the level that Kincaid did.
That pressure of following that up, man. Tough.
Walker Harris better be a dog. Oh man, listen, I love you, bro. You're my guy, but he better be good with everything that everyone's talking about him, man. That kid better come out and light the world on fire with all the hype. But I do like some of the intangibles I've seen for him. Like he's played against UCLA, he played against I think it was like Winston-Salem State or one of those D2 games they had, and then they played against Valley. I get it. The talent isn't there. But, Coach, we did see some starting quarterbacks in the SWAC struggle against Valley.
Especially at Valley.
So, I got to give him a little bit of – like, he's shown flashes of his potential. The question is – and really the question mark's not even Walker Harris, Coach, and I hate to do this to our guy. The question mark is kind of Matt Leone to me. Because I know Leone has it in his bag to build an offense around a guy like Walker. Because as an offensive coach, to go from a guy like Felix Harper to a guy who has no mobility and is a different type of player, it's tough to build. It's tough to shift that offensive mentality after 4 or 5 years of being in this lane. And I just want to see how creative Leone can get putting Walker Harris into positions, because let's just be honest, Walker might be pretty athletic, right? Let's just say he's athletic. You're not running QB power with Walker Harris like you did with Davius Richard.
No. You replace a lot of your playbook because rarely do you have the same guy in the locker room. Now, we were fortunate enough to go from John Gibbs, runner, okay passer, to Norris Footman, who could do both. to Noah Johnson, who was a runner, okay passer, to Felix, who was a passer, okay runner. So, you can limit what you do, but when those guys are totally different, now it's almost like you're doing a whole different playbook. And, the thing that I see for that kid, and I hope I'm wrong, but we all remember, man, you think the big brother something, wait till you see the little brother. And then the little brother gets there and you're like, come on, man. He was nowhere like his big brother. And I just don't, I hope that the kid is not listening to this and the pressure's on him to try and outdo what Davis did, because he's got to be his own kid. But I hope he's not hearing the chatter. But there's a lot of chatter, which is going to be a lot of pressure on him
Yeah,
and Matt.
and Davius was talking him up when I talked to him at the Legacy Bowl. I mean, he thinks that the standard's the standard, and I hope it is. We'll see what it is. But Coach Howard, and I've talked about this. I'll kick this one off, Coach. I know the easy answer is quarterback, but I'm going to go offensive tackle. And I know
Yeah,
that's such a specific position to have a question mark, but Howard's offensive line last year was really good, especially
no
through
doubt.
MEAC play. And you lose Danquah to the draft. Your other tackle, it's like Weatherspoon, I want to say is his name, transfers to Power 5. He goes to Illinois. You don't transfer to the Big Ten if you can't ball.
Can't play. Yeah,
And he
you
was
can't
actually
play.
he was actually the highest graded offensive tackle in the MEAC last year. So your two anchors on the edge are gone. The interior, I think, brings back some experience, also has a lot of potential. What do you do at tackle? Because with a new quarterback, if he's getting hit and he's getting pressure, instant pressure off the edge, man, his development is going to be a whole lot slower than Howard needs. And you're going to take some early losses that you can't afford in a really tight MEAC race anyway, especially they might not enter. You have to enter conference play with some momentum. If they lose a bunch of out of conference games because their quarterback play isn't ready because they can't protect the quarterback, that's going to be huge. So I think offensive tackle for me, Coach, is by far the biggest question mark for Howard next year.
Um, I'm with you up front, but I'd also say the home run hitting ability that they had with like Hawthorne.
Oh,
Um,
he's back too. Oh man, he's so good.
can they duplicate that? Because now everybody knows. I don't want to say they went under the radar, but let's just be honest. No one was bringing them out of that conference,
Yeah.
maybe except for themselves. So now that they are, the reigning champs, do they have another home run hitter outside of Hawthorne that could get them out of jams with the new quarterback? So the home run hitting ability, I think, is going to be huge for them. Can they duplicate what they did, and do they have another person that can do that?
I do think the running back room could probably do that because you bring back Jared Hunter, you bring back Eden James. Like, if I'm Howard, I'm running the football to death. I mean,
Let's keep that guy good.
we have enough depth there where we can split the carries among like all these backs and really not take a step back. So I think I'm running the football like crazy. But Coach, let's jump over here to the SWAC, and we'll start with UAPB. We'll go here. What's the question mark for UAPB?
Again, like you said, it's such an easy deal, but I think they played like five guys at quarterback. Um, they lost a lot in the portal. So my biggest question mark is, what are their numbers going to be like?
I got defense for them. I know quarterbacks, a question mark for them, but Coach, they allowed almost 450 yards of total offense in each game last year and gave up almost 35 points per game, both ranked last in the SWAC. I mean, and I agree in the chat. It could be everything, but the
Yeah.
one question mark I don't have is culture, just because Alonzo Hampton, I love what he brings to the table with his energy and his confidence. I mean, Coach, they played, was it Tulsa last year? They played Tulsa closer than a lot of other SWAC teams played their FBS opponents. And I think it was just the energy he brought to the sideline, but they're going to have to be better defensively. have to be better defensively. Because, Coach, they lost a few games just because their defense. I mean, Coach, they gave up, I want to say it was 40 points to Valley's offense in that true freshman's first start.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't have that.
Yeah. And his energy, you're right. I don't know. I can't remember who I think it was Alabama A&M. They were playing on TV.
Yes.
And he was nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
I
I
was
mean,
like, if he
Coach,
takes that headset off one more time, man, I'm gonna lose it. But
Coach and this will be the perfect jump to Valley because Valley is next. UAPB gave up 42 points to Valley. Valley averaged 12 points per game offensively last year.
they've got to find a way. And the question for them, for me, uh, outside looking in, they've got to find a way to get over the hump to get that win that changes the culture. Because to me, I think that's the biggest issue is the culture. Like you could almost look when we're playing them and we start to pull away, you can almost look in the demeanor of the kids like this was supposed to happen. Here we go again. That kind of thing. So they've got to find that one win. Hopefully it's not us. That changes their culture and kind of, pushes those guys up front.
Coach, I think it's offense for Valley and specifically offensive line because am I going to say that Ty Williams is a top 5 quarterback in the SWAC? I'm not. But is he good enough to win you a handful of games? I think he is. And they got talent at running back. Coach, they have 3 3-stars in that running back room, which might be more 3-stars than Valley's had on an offense in some years. So they have running back talent. They have a quarterback that is solid. I think Ty has Ty's not an elite SWAC quarterback, but he's the best quarterback Valley's had in a good while, I think.
I can rock
And
with that.
You can't give me 12 points per game. 12 points per game, Coach, and they average less than 250 yards per game.
My stat, 300.
I mean, it can't happen. I think, and I kind of agree with Chris, like Valley's defense has historically been scrappy. And that counts for something. So if your defense is scrappy, if Valley can put a little bit of pressure on the opposing offense, the conversation changes in some of these games. The problem is, even though the defense is scrappy early, man, if eventually the defense is going to give up a few. And when they do give up a few, the offense just isn't good enough to keep them in the game because, Coach, how annoying would it be for that scrappy defense to be invested in the game in the fourth quarter because it's a 7-point game?
Bro, I lived it. That's tough.
That's true.
That's tough. Running on the field, running off the field, that's tough. Those kids are 3 and out, 3 and out, and 3 and out the opponent. And here you are just as fast 3 and out. At some point, those looks, they get real sharp. And, the discord starts to happen where y'all can't stay on the field, where y'all can't stop, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it becomes tough. Ain't no doubt.
So, yeah, that's why offense is my pick there. Let's jump to Texas Southern, Coach. And I'll start here. I think the biggest question mark for me is just that culture year one. It's tough for me to make any assessments on them because nothing's coming out of the program. I mean, the only person I've heard anything positive come from is our guy Los J in the comments, our Texas Southern guy. I haven't heard about how Chase is looking in year 2. I haven't heard about how they're going to replace those 2 running backs that were killing at the Legacy Bowl. I haven't heard how they're going to replace any of the wide receivers they lost. I mean, they just got so many question marks. Just what's the culture? And then also there's been some reports that there's been some headbutting with the administration and stuff like that in the side of the program. So what's going on at Texas Southern? So for me, I just think it's a question mark all around just because we haven't heard anything.
Administration problems? What?
After this offseason, who would have ever thought?
What? Nah, question mark is who do they have? You know what I mean? Who do they have? being in it, as I always joke and laugh, the only active coach in media, uh, didn't see a whole lot of signings coming across the board. You know what I mean? Uh, so yeah, Paris, check that out for us. So I don't know who they have. You know, they again kind of like UAPB with me. What are their numbers? Uh, you know, who are the numbers? That kind of thing. So you know, my deal is you can go get Nick Saban out of retirement, but if he ain't got steak and potatoes in the cupboard and all that's in there is bologna, hey, it's what we got. You know,
I can only do so much with that. Like, you can,
and I love
like,
bologna, but I gotta have chips because I gotta put the chips on top of the bologna and I gotta put the bread. But if I ain't got all those ingredients to make it work, what we doing? You know, so I don't know if they have any ingredients, or what ingredients they have because it's been so hush hush.
yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's the way they want it.
I don't know if it's a good thing. We'll move on though. Bethune Cookman. Um, I would you see there's Lowe's J right here. He said 80 to 90% of the team is back. So we'll see. I want to hear more about Jace. That's the big thing because if Jace takes a huge step forward, the conversation kind of changes around that program. But
Will they continue to play like the '68 Jets versus everybody, or just us? You know, that's another question.
But Bethune's question mark for me is, oh, I think I want to. It's not a position group. It's not no player. Mine is, can they win the close games? Do they have that clutch ability to win competitive close ball games? Because everyone, including myself and you, have talked about how they're going to be a sleeper. Well, when it's fourth quarter, 4 minutes left, and it's a tie game, can you close it? Because we saw Bethune-Cookman, Texas Southern, some of those teams that didn't finish the season where they wanted to. A lot of it was because they lost those close games that they should have won. Can Bethune close this year? Have they developed that killer instinct late to close those close games? I don't know, and that's my biggest question mark for this team because to go from to be a sleeper team, be a successful sleeper team, you have to win some games you're not supposed to. And because let's just be honest, Coach, if Bethune was going to be a real sleeper, if they get Jackson in that same position they had Jackson last year, got to win that game, even on the road.
Yeah, because you got, for them, will everything that you put out there on paper show up? So, the question mark is, will all those kids that they sign show up and be there for them? Because, I've told you before, a lot of times, you have these kids that, you sign, and for what other reason, when it comes July, August, they either don't show up or they show up and they leave. So, for me, that's the biggest question mark. But like you said, like that Jackson game, when you've gotten 2 extra downs or something like that, you've got to take advantage of those opportunities.
It was 2 extra timeouts, I want to say. Someone in the chat can correct me. I want to say it was 2 extra timeouts.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of those opportunities. You had Southern down with your third string quarterback. You got to be able to win that game.
Not just them. I mean, Coach, I'm looking here. At Jackson State, they lose by 6 on the road. At Alabama State, they lose by 5. They lose to Texas Southern by 3. They lose to Southern by 10. And then, of course, that Grambling game was close early, but then late, Grambling kind of pulled away. And then same for FAMU. FAMU beat them 24-7. I mean, but Texas Southern, Bama State, Jackson, you turn those 3 wins.
You got to get at least 2 of those.
Because then you're sitting at 5-6. If you can beat Alabama State, Texas Southern last year in those close games, you're 5-6, and the conversation changes completely about what that team was. 3-8 to 5-6, whole different trajectory for the program. So win close games next year, and we can have a whole nother conversation about Bethune-Cookman.
Yep, because you win those, and you win, like you said, 1 or 2 of those. Now that propels you into, nobody's probably talking about the hype machine up at Bama State. Now the hype machine is at BCU, because now they are 1 less game away from where they were saying they should have been in the championship game. Now that's you in that position. Now it comes down to the Florida Classic. So, yeah, exactly.
And also too, Coach, we've talked about this on the show about the momentum of the locker room.
Yep.
If
Oh,
two of those
that's
games are
great.
wins, what's the confidence of that team going into some of those later games? Not even just the Florida Classic, the Grambling game, some of those other ones, whole different momentum, and who even
And
knows what's going
coach's
to
first
happen.
year. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's the big thing for Bethune. I want to move on here, Coach. We're going to go to Southern next. The biggest question mark for Southern, which I got a few on this one, but I'll toss it to you first.
Um, Biggest question is what's their identity going to be? Um, you know, does coach come in and keep because he was a part of the staff? Does he come in and keep the things fairly the same, or has it been a complete overhaul with what we're doing on the grass, what we're doing off the grass? Uh, just philosophy. What is it going to be? Who are they? And what is coach going to do uh, now that he's in that seat? First year guy.
Uh, God, quarterback's such an easy one, so I'm going to go away from quarterback, even though I do have question. Offensive line. Coach, and I've talked about this on the show a few times, and I don't think I can stress it enough. When you look back at those successful Southern teams that in the Odom's years where they were consistently 7-8 wins, they had one of the best offensive lines in the conference. The
The
offensive,
biggest.
yeah, the big but Coach, you play them every year. The offensive line that they've had the past few years has not been to the standard that was originally set at Southern.
No,
They have taken a massive step back, not just in size, but talent. Because you got to think, Coach, think about some of those all SWAC teams back in from like 2012 to 2015, 2018. It was guaranteed that there were a few Southern guys on first or second team almost every year.
Coach
Now,
Barry.
think about it. It was last year. I don't think Southern had a single offensive lineman last year on all SWAC.
But the other issue I think also within the program, which is why I said what I said, is that I think they led the conference. It was either them or Grambling that led the conference in penalties. Uh, they were guaranteed to give you at least 5 personal fouls out of nowhere, kind of thing. So can he clean that up? So that's kind of my whole thing with that. And I
Yeah,
think when you're talking about the offensive line,
they were third in the conference
third.
in total
Okay.
penalties. Grambling was first. Grambling had 108 penalties last year. I mean, they averaged 81 penalty yards per game. Texas Southern was second with 95, and Southern was next with 93. Well, my bad. This is by average yards. So actually, they were fourth. FAMU led the conference with 111 penalties, but they also played 2 extra games.
Okay.
So
I
their
was going to say
average is a
that.
little down there.
But I knew they were up there in
Yeah.
the top slots. And that was part of the issue, I think, within the culture or however you want to put it. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Coach, I don't think I've seen this in a long time. I got to look at the stats from those Odom years, but Southern ranked third to last in the conference in sacks allowed last year with 37. The only 2 teams that were below them were UAPB and Valley.
Mm, it's not good company.
No,
Nothing against them.
and those
If you say your brand is what your brand is, that's not good
and
company.
and there were only 4 teams in the SWAC last year, Coach, that allowed more than 27 sacks. Bethune, Southern, UAPB, and Valley.
Damn, we wasn't in that.
No, y'all only allowed 17 sacks last year. That was 4th best in the conference.
When you get that ball out your hand, Aaron.
Yeah, Grambling and Alabama State led the conference with 15 sacks allowed. FAMU was third with 16. So FAMU was actually leading until the Celebration Bowl, and then they had that one that kind of pushed them over the top. So really, FAM led in the regular season. They played 2 extra games, but I'm going to go here, Coach. Grambling State. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'll take it first. Offensive identity.
Yep.
Because you have a quarterback that's super talented, but he does not fit Dooley's system. And also, too, we have a very offensive-minded head coach, Mickey Joseph. Who is he handing over the entire playbook to Dooley, or is he going to be the one calling the plays? I just want to see what the offensive identity is going to be, because they added some really good transfers. They had a whole lot of new pieces. How do they build around those new pieces, and what is their offensive identity going to be? And Jordan, I said the same thing. That's why I didn't really want to put it out there yet, but I heard there might be a quarterback battle down there.
I'm going to go on the other side of the ball from you because they lost.
Everything.
Yeah. Edge rusher, linebacker, I think the whole secondary. So defensively, from a already struggling part of the football team, what are they going to be and who are they going to be? So I'm kind of one of those deals. What are they going to be defensively? Defensively is going to be the huge thing for me because apparently you're bringing in a new quarterback, new system. So, defenses are supposed to be ahead of offense. So how far will the new defensive system be ahead of the new offensive system when it comes time? And knowing that they brought in 30 plus new players, how close can they get to being being ahead of the offense until the offense can catch up? So defensively, what are they and who are they going to be?
I'll say this, and obviously nothing's confirmed yet because it's June 15th. If Crawley doesn't start,
Turn it down.
I'll save my comments for when that's announced, if that's announced, because I really hope that's not the case, but I have heard some rumblings about that. But let's move on here,
But
Coach.
I can see that coming.
Yeah, I know. I hate it. Let's go to PV. And I know everyone is going to point towards the one side of the ball. I think it's defense 1,000,000% in my opinion. Like, obviously, you go and get a new OC in Whedon. What's the identity going to be? You're going to have a new starting quarterback, replace the entire running back room, all that. But Coach, their defense was atrocious last year at times. I mean, they couldn't stop anybody last year. Coach, I'm looking here. They allowed over 31 points per game. I mean, and then they ranked second to last in the conference behind Valley, allowing almost 400 yards per game, 44 touchdowns, and over 6.5 yards per play.
You read that off, and I'm like, man, what could have been? But
If y'all would have
anyway,
called them later,
yeah, like
played
what
them
could
in
have been?
November.
Yeah, what could have been? Um, and I get why you say defense. Uh, I'm going. Uh, I'm going offensive coordinator because now you've
Okay.
had this groundwork for so many years with your previous OC. Is it going to be a wholesale change? Are they going to be completely the same? Was it a situation of where coach handed the new OC the playbook, or did he bring his own playbook? So I'm saying, who is the guy with the collared shirt, and how are the kids going to take that on and move with it?
I'll say this, and I can't confirm this. This is just my assumption based on what I know. Anthony Whedon was not taking that job if he got handed a playbook.
I can see that.
It's going to be Anthony Whedon's all. Like, you don't win the play caller of the year in the CAA and go take a job at PV if you can't run your own offense. I
But
would
I'm
be,
just saying,
especially because now if
defensive head coach.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's why I think it's his playbook, because if it was an offensive head coach, maybe we had the conversation that the offensive head coach would have his fingers in the offense. But also, too, I think they understood, because as bad as defense was, and I had to pick it because, Coach, they ranked second to last in the conference in defensive efficiency, just above UAPB. Their defensive efficiency was 155.8. Valley was next above them at 139. That's how inefficient their defense was last season. So I would have picked offense, but I trust Whedon, man. And I've said this on HBCU Nightly. I've said it on here. Like, Whedon's going to get it right. Now, is it this year? I don't know if he has the talent around, in the building to get it right. But every single place Whedon has went, he's turned that offense around. So I think he'll be confident. And I also think, and this is no offense to Frederick, because we've had him on the show. That's my guy,
Yeah.
and he's gonna do big things at Southern. I think they understood they needed to revamp their offense, because I think Frederick kind of reached his ceiling with his scheme at PV. Southern has the personnel that best fits what Mark Frederick wants to do, which is run the football. PV, it's not working there, in my opinion. And I think Whedon is going to go in there, get a quarterback in there, and try to air it out. I just don't know if they have the quarterback. I don't think the kid they landed it from Houston is the guy right now. He doesn't have a whole lot of film. We'll see, Coach. We've seen transfers with no film come in and be spectacular, but I always get skeptical. So until I see it from, I think it's Coley or Corley, until I see it, I can't be there. But I think if you can't rank 11th in the SWAC in defensive efficiency right above UAPB and expect to compete for anything. So that's the other reason I went there. Let's shift here, Coach. Alabama A&M.
That's all you had to say.
Oh God. There's so many.
Due to time restraints, all I'm going to say is, again, when will they bounce back from the glass era? Because they haven't. Can they? And I know he's a few years removed. Can they bounce back from the glass era? Because they haven't been able to reinvent themselves since he left.
Oh, Reese, you are. That's crazy. That's crazy. And if I'm not mistaken, Reese is the A&M guy too. So that's coming from inside the house. That's coming from the calls are coming from inside the house at this point. I can't help anything with that. And I like that staff, and I got connections on the staff. Shout out to Coach Ma, man. That's my guy. But I mean, the question mark for me, I know it's going to sound great. How do they handle the early season pressure, Coach? Because let me pull up their schedule. Hang on real quick, because I know they open with Auburn, so that's a loss. But then they got two, one's a D2 game against Kentucky State. I don't even know what division Georgetown College is in. That's not Georgetown, the Patriot League school. Georgetown College is some other school. I don't know, where it is. But Coach, the I guess string of games from September 21st to October 5th is so important. If A&M loses those 3 games in that stretch, I don't know if they can recover, because Coach, they'll probably be 2-1. Lost to Auburn, they'll beat the 2 teams not there. If they lose either one of those games, he's gone, especially the NAIA school. But Coach, you have at Austin P, at FAMU, and then the game in Mobile against Jackson.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the schedule, but yeah, I'm listening to you.
If they're 0-3 in that 3-game stretch, it might be over.
Especially if it's a bad 0-3.
Oh, yeah, if they're not even competitive in any of those games, especially because, listen, Austin P has been a really good team. New head coach. I mean, the whole roster is revamped, because half that Austin P team went with Scotty to UTEP. So, new team, reloaded. You can't get blown out.
They could be 2-2. They can be 2-2 when they get to FAM. Let me ask. That's where the real test goes.
Let me ask you this: that FAMU Jackson, Austin P. Which game in your opinion, is the most important to win?
Shit, Kentucky State.
No.
Oh, I'm just saying, because if he loses at Kentucky State, he ain't seeing those.
No, I'm talking about those 3: Austin P, FAM, Jackson.
I'm gonna say FAM, because I think if he drops to Austin P and he drops to FAM, he's not gonna get to Jackson. So I'm saying FAM.
You think they're gonna fire him before October?
Bro, if he gets boat race versus FAM, boat race versus Austin P, struggles with Kentucky State,
Okay,
Alabama. I mean,
yeah,
Auburn is what it
yeah.
is. Um,
Adding in
but
the struggling against Kentucky State is where I got you. I thought you just meant if they lose those games. I was like, that might be tough.
oh no. That's my saying. My saying that is the overall, because he can buy himself some time if he gets to 2-2 by the fam game. He can buy himself some time unless he just gets 50 piece, and then
Oh
he's
yeah,
not going to
no,
see.
yeah.
He's not going to see Jackson.
If it's like 50-3 or something crazy, like no, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Now it will be interesting. Like, let's say they go 0-3, they don't fire them. So what? They'll be sitting at 2-4. If you lose to Bethune-Cookman at homecoming, who
Oh
everyone
yeah,
thinks is a
you're
sleeper,
not
I don't know
you're
if he
not
makes it to
seeing the
Magic
Magic
City.
City Classic. No, you're not going to see the
Yeah.
Magic City
And
Classic.
God forbid if he makes it to Magic City and doesn't beat Bama State, I don't think it matters in the first place. Just the question mark is how do they handle the pressure? Because they got a brutal schedule early. And I just don't know if there's a lot of guaranteed wins up there other than the 2 non-D1 games. And listen, I think Langford can be there. And he's pretty good. And they got the running back come back, Eaglin. They got some solid wide receivers. Coach, I want to say Hero Sports said that they had the best returning wide receiver in the conference. And
A&M?
yeah. So apparently they got offensive talent. It's just, God, I mean, I find it hard to believe, Coach, they're going into Bragg and beating FAM unless FAM is just not what we think they are.
Gotta be
Or
competitive.
yeah, and then also they do got Quad Brown on the roster, who's the quarterback from UT Martin, and before that I think he was at Georgia State.
But I like the kid that they had versus Grambling. If
Yeah,
they
he's
just
back.
do the same things
Langford, yeah.
but they after Grambling, they didn't do the same thing they did versus Grambling, which I could not understand. That made no sense to me. This
Yeah.
kid just ran for
300
Heisman
yards.
Trophy numbers, and then you come back the next week and you throw it 300 times. Like I don't. Who am I? I don't know.
I
Anyway,
don't know. I'm with you, but we'll move on here. Let's go to I guess we'll wrap up the West, man. We'll talk about Alcorn State.
quarterback.
Okay.
Quarterback. If Mako gets it right, um, we're gonna be tough to beat. Um, it could be a situation of where he takes off and puts us in the Noah Johnson, John Gibbs realm of things. So if he comes in and gets it right, I think that's our whole deal right there. If we can solidify that early on, I think we'll be pretty good.
Yeah, Zoe's crazy. Zoe said that Port gets a state.
Hey,
We love
I
it,
think
man.
I think I still have about 120 days to celebrate the fact that we went up the street and dropped bombs. So uh, yeah, Fort Gibson
Uh,
State, we'll take that. Yeah,
Someone said the Lorman Tech Community College.
we'll take that
Oh,
too.
the rivalry is so great, man. That's still the Soul Bowl is up there, man. I don't like the Capital City Classic. I get why it's called that, but the Soul Bowl
Soul
should
Bowl
be the
this year, baby.
only name. And again, I'm gonna bang the table for this. There needs to be a trophy made for that game. The Soul Bowl trophy. There's enough creative people in the chat, enough creative people at both schools come together and make a Soul Bowl trophy for that game.
Let's get it. I'm with it.
I don't know who
Because
we got to call.
if it was, guess where it would be at right now? Lorman Technical Community College, Fort Gibson State. That's where that trophy would be right now. But no, for real though, if we get that situation taken care of, man, we're gonna be pretty tough.
Yeah, I think it's Mako. Just the hype last year, he gets banged up and hurt. And then at the end of the day, even when he gets healthy, Aaron Allen was playing out of his mind. And if he starts the whole season like that, then I mean, there's an argument that he's probably SWAC Offensive Player of the Year. So I get it, but Mako's gonna have to live up to the hype now, man. Everyone's gonna be looking at him. Everyone's gonna be pointing their fingers at him. Then also, too, Coach, put a little pressure on you guys in the collar shirts. Montario Hunt was a monster on the outside. Who steps up on the outside at wide receiver? Because Montario Hunt haunted some defensive coordinators in the SWAC over the past 2 years.
We got a young guy that came uh in that game up the street and made a few plays for us. And he actually was running by, got snatched down, 15-yarder. So he's another guy in that mold, uh, Tyron, that I think is going to be really good for us. That'll pick up where Monterio left off at. So
I
I
like it.
think we're good there. And again, uh, when you talk about Monterio and Malik and what they did for that group when we made the wholesale change, that's why when you read off those PV numbers, I'm like, oh man, what could have been? But again,
Mm.
if if he gets that, I think everything else just kind of falls into place.
And in the chat, I see Reese. I agree with you. That's really and truly that might be why I'm a little bit biased because that's the SWAC championship game I want to see. Just because I know the Soul Bowl is already going to be huge this year in Alcorn.
Uh,
If we get a rematch for the SWAC championship game, I don't
in
like
Lorman,
it,
oh man,
either place. If it's in Jackson, there's not going to be an empty seat in the stadium, that 60,000 person stadium. And if it's in Lorman, coach, y'all better find a way to build another hill. Like you guys are going to have to build a bigger hill behind the bleachers because there's not going to be enough room for the people coming to Alcorn for a Jackson Alcorn State SWAC championship game.
winner take all. That would be
Oh my,
absolutely crazy.
because I went back and watched the game. I think it was the one y'all hosted Southern.
Yeah.
Oh
Both
my
times.
God, I forgot which year I watched, but man, I think it would be even bigger than that. And I went to the Jackson Southern championship game, and I know what that rivalry is. I still think the Jackson Alcorn one in the SWAC championship would be bigger than that one because I don't think Southern fans went into that thinking they had a chance.
In 18, they did. 18, they really
Oh
did.
no, I'm talking about the Jackson Southern championship in
Oh
2022. I
no,
don't think the Southern
no,
fans. Yeah,
nobody did. Nobody did.
no, Coach. I will
Because
say
that
if
regular
you
season game was so horrible.
wasn't it like it was like 20 something to nothing because that was the game day went to if I'm not mistaken. It was
Yeah.
raining and they had like all the rain delays and it was just. But Reese, I'm telling you, and this is another tangent, and we'll wrap this up, man. Because we said we are going to do an hour on Saturday mornings. This show is going to be
Yeah.
4 hours long, but it's not a joke. Take it from somebody like me, who I didn't believe it either. If you aren't on the stretch by like 6 a.m., man, good luck. Good luck. Because, Coach, I mean, what was it? It was that 2022 year, wasn't it? That you
Man,
guys
yeah,
hosted it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was insane. You can ask anybody. I mean, I was on the stretch coach as I stayed in Natchez that night. And I remember that's back when you guys had who was the old SID up there? Brian.
Brian,
And
yeah.
shout out to
B
my
Harvey,
guy. Yeah,
B
shout out to my
Harvey.
guy Brian, man, over there in Bethune now. He called me because I was traveling up from Mobile and I was like, hey man, I gotta go check into the hotel. He was like, bro, come to campus. This was the day before. This was on Friday afternoon. He was like, if you don't get to campus right now to come get your media pass, I can't help you. He was like, I ain't gonna be able to see you tomorrow. So I had to drive up from Natchez to come get my media pass and back down to Natchez that night. And I remember I woke up a little late, got on the stretch about 4:45, coach. I didn't park behind the athletic complex till like 6:45.
Uh,
Man, it was insane. So, coach, if you guys host a SWAC championship, bro, I'm just sleeping in your office. Just I'll bring an air mattress and I'm gonna kick it
we
in the
got it.
office.
Come on through. We
Yeah.
got it. Ain't no doubt.
He's where someone said if you ain't on the stretch by 2 a.m. for that SWAC championship game, might as well just watch it from the house.
Come on through, baby. Yeah.
Oh man, but let's wrap this segment up, man. Yes, no reception either, unless I think Verizon. I think Verizon's the only one that gets any service on campus.
Excuse me, Miss Paris, but we now have a deal with C Spire, and they came out and put extra cell phone towers up there. So we will be able to tweet as soon as the game is over that we have another 365 to celebrate our win over the team up the street.
Oh, but we're gonna have to make like shirts for the show for that game. Like we'll have to make our own trophy, all that. But man, let's get to the final three teams. We'll start with Alabama State. Big for me, Coach. I think. Oh God, there's two I really want to go with. One is offensive identity, but then the other one's secondary.
Yeah.
Just because they lost so much, and I do think they have the talent to replace the Mikey Victors and those guys because they got two kids who are 6'2", 6'3" corners that look just like Mikey out there. I don't know where they keep finding these kids to come to the SWAC at 6'2", 6'3". They do, but I really do think it's offensive identity because they have an offensive coordinator who has won in HBCU football. He was the OC at A&T, knows what it takes to win championships. But new quarterback coming in with Andrew Body, new running back room, new wide receivers. Offensive line is going to be pretty good, I think. How does he take all you talk about ingredients, Coach? How does he take all these new ingredients and put them together? And what does it look like early for Alabama State? Because if it doesn't click, they can't be panicking, moving parts around mid-season. Because if you expect to go win a title, you have to have that figured out by the first few weeks of the season.
And I'll keep it straight. Simple and short. The hype machine. You've put it out there.
Yeah.
Now, the hype machine, can you put it on the grass? Because you've all but made T-shirts saying East champs. So here's an opportunity. So we'll see early on. So I just want to see if the hype machine is going to equal up to on the field as to what it's been, out in the public.
That Central game, the Orange Blossom Classic, is so just massive.
You better put a good product out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If Bama State gets boat raced by Central, which I don't think it will happen, I think that's going to be a competitive game. Yeah, especially because then in 2 weeks you go on the road to Samford, who's going to be a tough out of conference game, and then you got a road trip against Bethune-Cookman, who's the sleeper of the conference, and you still got games against FAM. You got the Magic City Classic. You got Alcorn and Mobile. You got to go to the Hole in Grambling, which has been a house of horrors for Body and everyone else in the conference. And you got Jackson. Yeah, and you got raise your, it's a problem. Let me ask you. So I got this person's name muted on Twitter just because I'm tired of seeing it because I just get annoyed, Coach, and just for my mental health, I got a few words blocked just because the discourse on social media is crazy. I don't see anything with Caitlin Clark on my timeline. Got Caitlin Clark muted on Twitter. Someone asked, "Is Alabama State the Caitlin Clark of the SWAC?"
Nah, they don't move the needle like that. I'm gonna say she moves the needle. They don't move the needle. They don't move the needle like that. Now, if you ask them, will they say that? Yeah, but they don't. They're not moving the needle like that.
I like it. I like it. Let's go here, man. Jackson State, and the one everyone's been waiting on. I know a lot of people in the chat have been waiting on this one. What's the biggest question mark for Jackson entering next season?
Defensively, coach has left. New coordinator, my guy, but they also lost a lot. So defensively, what will be their identity? So they replaced some guys back in the secondary. They also brought in some guys in the secondary. So what will they be defensively, and how quick will they gel to what Coach Quinn is putting out there for them? So I'd say defensively.
Yeah, defensively is a good one. I think more so for me, if I'm looking position wise, I think an easy one, and I don't want to go here just because I mentioned I don't like taking the easy way out with quarterback. I think the development of Jacoby and Morgan is going to be huge next year because Coach he put together some really good performances, but he really wasn't facing like the top teams in the conference. And then I'm going to give him an incomplete grade against Alcorn because he really didn't play. He didn't play the whole game. He got hurt, and then they put Jason Brown in. And we talked last show. Well, as soon as Jason Brown went in, Alcorn won that game. What is he going to look like in year 2? And especially with a full year starting, a full offseason to develop, a little bit of a quarterback battle going on there, supposedly. But I'm really interested to see what Jacobian looks like. But you mentioned defensively, I think it's specifically linebacker / maybe edge rusher, because you look at those Jackson defenses that were at the top of the conference, they had elite edge rushers last year. I felt like the interior of the defensive line led that team. And they had to
Yep.
get real creative to get pressure on the quarterback, where they had to bring a lot of unique blitzes and unique schemes to get to the quarterback. They didn't have that guy where, coach, if you put 3-4 guys on the line of scrimmage, you knew that one guy was going to beat his one-on-one matchup and go get it. They
Yeah, they were really stout. They were really stout in the middle, which goes back to your linebacker deal. If you got stout guys in the middle, they can keep your linebackers clean. So they're not
yeah,
as thick as they were in the middle, uh, to my knowledge.
yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, how those linebackers now are able to move and work about. But that's still, to me, that's still within their defensive deal. How creative is he going to be up front with the stunts, the twist, and all that kind of stuff? And if they're going
Yeah.
to be able to pick it up, how soon will they be able to pick it up?
Yeah, they just don't have. They didn't have that elite guy who could go get the quarterback, and also too, with linebacker, there were some times where the run fits weren't there, and I brought this up on the show a few times last year, where they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were in the wrong gaps, and they would get gashed.
Yeah,
And you can't have that happen if you're going to go and win a championship. But those are two things that I'm looking at, and I'm interested to see. And this isn't really a question mark. I'm really interested to see what Quinn does with the defense, because Coach, me and you have had Quinn on the show. He's one of, if you ask any coach that has coached with Quinn, they all have high praise for him and his defensive mind. What with him finally getting full control of a defense, what does it look like?
yeah, and that's going to be the
What can
question.
he do? And I'm more just excited to see that, more so than it be a question mark, because he's one of the most respected young coaches in the conference. And
Oh, that's
people
my
that,
guy. I
yeah,
love him a lot. But he's always been a back end guy. So now putting that back end with that front end and gelling
yeah,
all together, what is it going to look like? Yep, I'm with you.
yeah. Now this is good. Man, God, we could spend an hour on this team. I don't know why I saved them for last. FAMU to wrap this up, Coach.
To me, it's more about the guys in the collar shirts.
Ooh, okay.
You know, uh, we will all hit this portal. If we don't get this guy, then we got this guy, and we still all hit the portal. So, what will the guy with the collar shirt? What is he going to be like? What is the program going to be like under him? Because at the end of the day, you know, a lot of that senior leadership left. So how is he going to implement what he does, coming from the headset that used to be an offensive headset is now a defensive headset? So how is that going to translate for what you guys are, what you're doing now? Willie would score first. Now,
Yeah,
what is Cozy going to be?
yeah. I think. Oh, and I think this guy can be good, man. That's my guy, Coach Henry. What what is his? Because I think he's a good coach. The question for Fam is he going to be able to make the adjustments on the fly that Willie was able to?
Right.
Willie was
New
so
coordinator.
good off the cuff and just dialing up the right play at the right time. Because we saw it last year with Texas Southern, with Howard, with Jackson. Even if the offense was struggling, it would take one moment for him to call the right play in the right moment, and the whole momentum changed.
True.
And I think that's going to be the interesting thing, is if Henry can get the same thing out of the offense. And then, I mean, let's be honest. I see a lot of people mentioning D-line. Their D-line is going to be good. I think edge rusher, if you're going to go D-line, would be the question mark for that. Is just, do they have that? We talked last show, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We talked last show about edge rusher development at FAM. To me, if you're going to go a defensive question mark, guys, I think it's Mike. It's Mike linebacker, just because even though I don't think he should have won SWAC Defensive Player of the Year, it still is the case that Isaiah Major did so much for that defense. And there's an argument to be made that even though Bubba and Rico Dozier and those guys put up a lot of numbers, there was no debating the most athletic linebacker in the SWAC last year that was starting was Isaiah Major, in his ability to be in coverage, his ability to blitz, his instincts, his experience. Isaiah Major did so much. Do they have that guy at Mike, Coach, that is All-American SWAC Defensive Player of the Year potential? Because he was able to cover up so many mistakes. Like, they could put him in coverage, they could blitz him, they could use him in the run game. his versatility was crazy. Even coming out of Indy, coach, I watched this film in Indy. That dude plays slot corner, boundary, like deep safety, box safety. Mike stepped down into the edge and was used as a blitz weapon. Do they have a guy who is just that kind of switchblade weapon that Isaiah Major was?
Yeah, and that again, that's going to be one of those question marks. I think that they'll find out in week 0.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Maybe
let's
week
not
1.
forget
We'll
again.
see. We'll see about Norfolk.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll at least see if he can run around. But again, this is a team that lost a lot and also brought in a lot from the portal. And
Yes.
I can't stress it enough, man. That is that's nothing but the dice game when you're dealing in a portal, super, super heavy. So, losing those 2 key kids that had all those minutes for him to the portal, that's gonna be a huge hole to fill. So, we'll see. But my big question mark for them is the collar shirt and how do they handle uh being in the spotlight now. No longer the assistant. You really have on the headset now. So
And I will say, man, that was a name that I was looking at too. I do think a name that you are going to know by the end of the season is James Ash. I watched a little bit of film, coach, last week on him. Kid's a little bit of a baller. And he kind of reminds me of Anthony Dunn, where not his game. I'm going to rephrase that. He reminds me of Anthony Dunn, where he had a good late season the year before. Coming into this year, he could take that next step, because that's kind of what you saw with Dunn, where he kind of had a quiet year 2 years ago, and then this past season he took a massive leap forward. Ash could be that guy, and I do agree that's a name to know. Coach, let's quickly, because this topic was our bold take. Someone submitted this, and we kind of talked about this last show. And we're going to do a bold take episode. If you weren't here at the beginning, I'm going to put up a post on my page. Coach is going to put it up, and we're going to post it on the YouTube, put it on Reddit, all that good stuff. We want y'all's biggest hot takes for the season. So don't put them in. You can put them in the chat now if you want, and me and Coach will write them down. But next week or the week after, we're going to do a full show. Me and Coach are going to clear out the schedule. We'll go 2 hours if we have to. And we're going to cover all y'all's boldest takes of the season. We might even make 2 episodes from it. And we're going to rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, how bold your prediction is for next season. 10 being extremely bold. That would be like Valley and Delaware State meet in the Celebration Bowl. 1 would just be, Jackson, Alabama State, Alcorn wins the Celebration Bowl. Not very bold. And we'll break down why and why not. But, Coach, our first bold prediction of the year, not even for the year, just bold statement, was someone messaged me and said that the SWAC has been the most talented team in the Celebration Bowl every single season and has only lost because of bad coaching.
I'd say point to the bad coaching part of what you're talking about in that, because I don't think that's been the case. I think it's been really evenly matched. I just think, a play here, play there, a few adjustments. If you want to say bad coaching, that's fine. I'll go with that, because if I'm coaching on the school up the street, when South Carolina had that bad man out wide,
Shaq.
um, oh, he ain't seeing just one person. I don't care if it's Travis. I don't care. He ain't just seeing him the rest of
If
the
it's
time.
if it's Nugget, well, no, they didn't have
Some
Travis at that time. It was
it
Nugget
was
and Isaiah Bolden.
Bolden,
Yeah.
Yeah, Bolden. You're not just seeing one of those guys. Uh, After you've shown me the first 2 times, you're not showing me a third time that you can go get it. We're gonna have somebody in front of you. We're gonna have somebody inside of you. We're gonna have somebody over the top. Now, if somebody else beats us, that's fine. Now, that would be the only thing that I would say coaching wise, because they dared that guy to beat them, and he did just that. Uh, if you remember, it was strictly just throw it up, go get it. We just better. Other than that, I think they've been pretty evenly matched.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the outcome just hasn't favored us. 18, like I said, we should have won that game. I guess, if you want to go coach in there as well, uh, rather the kid mishit it or we was told to kick it deep.
Yeah.
We kicked to the best kid in the country. But other than that, I mean, point to a time where it's just been bad coaching
And
for me.
I see people in the chat, because Coach, I'll just let you know, we got called out last show by saying that we don't know enough MEAC football, because we said that South Carolina State wasn't as talented as Jackson in 2021. and that we didn't know enough about that, but we'll let that slide. I want to say this. The person who submitted this question was an A&T fan.
I mean, for a while there, it was the A&T Invitational.
And so for an A&T fan who he's taking a shot at his own program here with this bold take, that's crazy that a North Carolina A&T fan was the one. So I just want to say this for all the MEAC people listening to the replay and in the chat. This question came from an A&T fan who I guess is now a CAA fan now. But I mean, Coach, just kind of going through because I got the history here pulled up just to like refresh everyone's memory. In 2015, you had the A&T team that beat Alcorn 41-34. I just I don't know if coaching was the difference in that one, bro. That team had what Tariq Cohen, and that was the one where the return kind of shifted. You guys both had special teams returns actually that game, right?
Yep.
Because you guys had the kickoff return, so I don't know if that was a coaching issue. I just think that was two talented teams, and one of them won, and one of them had arguably the best player in the entire country.
Yeah, still doing it in the NFL, no doubt. Uh, the only thing I think we probably should have changed in that situation was went to an 18-man box and make them beat us throwing the ball. But other than that, uh, that kid was really, really, really special. And he's shown that in the NFL.
I think the teams were pretty evenly matched in 2016.
Yeah. Other than
I don't. Yeah, Grambling State and Central in 2016. I don't see any huge talent difference there. I think Grambling was probably the more talented team, maybe a little bit, just because of quarterback. But also, it's tough to judge that game, Coach, because neither offense played well, and then you had the situation with the helmet and the block, the block field goal or extra point, you would call it. So I'm not gonna say 2016 that was was bad coaching. I just think it was a mistake by the kid. It got super hyped celebrating, and that wouldn't even affect the SWAC. Now, where it gets interesting is 2017, 2018. I think 2017 A&T was the more talented team, even with Kincaid on that Grambling team. I mean, you got to think that A&T team was undefeated that year, and I don't know how you can say that A&T was just less talented than Grambling that year.
Again, I think it's evenly matched because you got to remember Grambling had those guys on the outside with the running back as well. But to say that it was just a mismatch, no, I wouldn't go that far.
No. Now, 18, me and you talked before, so this was the rematch. I do think with Noah Johnson at quarterback, with Chris Blair outside, Raynard was great at A&T, so I'm not taking anything away from him, but I do think Alcorn and A&T this year, this was probably the closest matchup between Alcorn and A&T, in my opinion, in terms of just pure overall talent.
I can go with that. And then, again, it's, you're splitting hairs.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough to like go back and say, I think the bold take of this, I think would be like a 9 for me on that scale of like not bold to bold. Because I just don't see like this huge talent gap between the SWAC team and the MEAC team. Because we just talked 18 was almost even. 17, I think you probably give it to A&T in that year. 16 is pretty even. I think 15, you lean A&T in that game just because of Tariq Cohen. So it's like I don't think the SWAC is just. And then, Coach, me and you talked beforehand. You were on the staff. A&T was the more talented team in 19 on paper.
I'll talk about
that team
was
had so many freaky.
They had so many transfers that had been there. I mean, they were talented.
Because that was the year they had was it Khalil Carter at quarterback at A&T?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm not mistaken, that was they had Jermaine Martin at running back, and then they had that linebacker. Was that Jacob Roberts' freshman year? I want to say it was his freshman year. Yeah, he was young, and that was kind of like his breakout performance. Now, the last 3 years is, I think, more where the conversation gets interesting.
And I told you the one year that I would say that And that's only because the school up the street did what the school up the street did. That
Yeah.
was their defensive philosophy. That's just what they do. That's what they did. Um, Stubbornness, or however you want to put it, coaching, however you want to put it. That to me would be the only one to say, okay, you might have got out coached just a little bit there. And that
Yeah,
was just because of what you do.
Buddy. And Buddy Pugh is just a legend. And at the end of the day, I do think Jackson got outcoached that game. And I will say, I understand the comment that kind of called us out on it. Maybe we didn't give South Carolina State enough credit, but what was the spread on that game going into there? Like it was like Jackson like 15 or plus, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
spread,
it's crazy.
like we
Yeah, I
got to,
remember it's crazy.
because people forget like South Carolina State entered that game at what, 6-5? And you had a Jackson
Yeah,
team whose only loss was to ULM by single digits on the road.
6 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the trenches, like I do think South Carolina State had the advantage. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Coach. South Carolina State had the advantage on the O line. Obviously, Jackson's O line was terrible that year. You know, as
Oh yeah,
much
yeah.
as
He got beat up.
as much as Jablonski, Green, and Godbolt and those guys were great on the defensive line, let's not forget James Houston had like 30 sacks that year on that
Crazy.
defensive line, and they still had Devontae Davis, and then also too, I understand the linebacker argument, but let's not forget that if I'm not mistaken, that was the year they had Keontae Hampton and Aubrey Miller
Yeah,
at
they were both
linebacker.
there. Yep.
Freaks. The one spot that you can make us now, this is be a debate, and I'm going to ask your opinion because you kind of in the coaching world, I'd be interested to see how you feel. Corner would be such an interesting debate because you had Nugget and Isaiah Bolden. And on the other side, you had, I think it's Zafir Kelly and Kobe Durant.
And in the moment, you would say the people up the street had the nod because they had the two, not taking anything away from the other kid.
Yeah.
We all know about Durant, not taking anything away from the other kid, but that would have been the on a scale of 10, Durant's a 10, that kid probably was 8.5, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, as to where when you talk about the other two from up the street, those kids both came in at nines, you know. So, to me, that's where that kind of just kind of split hairs.
Yeah.
Um, and
If you
kind of,
go
went from there.
if you go off a draft grade, you probably got to give the edge to South Carolina State just because, I mean, Jacoby Durant was what, like a 4th-round pick? And also
Third, I
had
think.
no, it was day 3 for
Was it
sure.
four? Okay.
It was day 3, so I think it was 4th or 5th round, one of those two. But coaching staffs that weren't even close. I'm just going to put that out there. Like coaching staffs that weren't even close that year. Now, the SWAC won last year, so I don't think it's worth splitting hairs on that with the FAMU Howard. And I think everyone kind of agrees that FAMU was the more talented team last year. No one's going to argue that. But and that's what I'm saying. Like I get the South Carolina State argument, and they were talented. I want to repeat, just so people in the comments don't freak out. They were super talented. I'm not saying that they didn't deserve to win or nothing like that. But FAMU beat South Carolina State by like 30 that year, and they lost to Alabama A&M that year. So it's like I don't. It's just so tough to look at that. And now the 2022 year, Coach, and we'll end it on this. I think it's the most interesting debate of the past 3 years, just because did Jackson have a whole lot of talent? Yes, but due to the fact that so many people opted out and there were coaching changes and players were getting suspended for things that didn't happen and all the external factors, just I don't even know if it was a coaching issue. It was just a culture issue in 2022.
Oh, ain't no doubt. It was, and I no, I would say it was coaching because at that point, I understand the magnitude of who the person was, but I also think that the AD or someone should have stepped in and said, "This is what we're doing." Because I think at the end of the day, the antics, the sideshow associated with it, caught up with him in the game, and I could be wrong, but I just
No,
feel like
you were
that
not
caught up
wrong.
with him.
I mean, you had people being suspended because of the portal, because of travel. I've never been in the position because I'm not a coach, but I can only imagine that as a player, I'm going to put myself in the player's shoes. My head coach spending more time in Colorado than with me and preparing for that game had to be had to be. So, coach, just think about your 2 times going to the Celebration Bowl. If you and Mac and that coaching staff spent more time, like let's say y'all were going to, I mean, we'll just name it Kennesaw State, and you guys spent most of your time in Atlanta and left some of the assistants back preparing Alcorn for that Celebration Bowl, would it even have been close?
No, no. And then you got to look at who, and I say it lightly. You got to look at who was left
Who
there
was
to do
there?
the preparing, um, and what their relationship was with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You hear all the outside talk on this, that, and the third, but I think when you're leaving, when you're going to do that, you've got to leave your next top guy there. He can't go with you, because you've got to be able to keep a level of what we do this in place. And then the chatter that was around it was just
Mm.
crazy. So the kids were hearing it as well. So
And,
again,
and then also too, it doesn't help when you like Trey Oliver is
the scheme is a
it.
scheme.
Well, no, not even. If you don't want to talk about scheme, we had Matt Leone on the show before and after the game. Coach,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
knew. He knew. Like, go
yeah.
back and watch that interview, guys. If you haven't seen it with Leone right for the Celebration Bowl, he was like, "Bro, we got something cooked up," and we talked to him off camera, and they knew. And then also too with Trey Oliver, who I'm just going to be honest, out of all the head coaches that I've personally talked to, he's one of my favorite coaches in the entire country, just because of how real he is, how he approaches the game, that chip on his shoulder, even though he doesn't have to have it. The fact that all week, not only that, the media was giving him motivation. The Celebration Bowl was giving him motivation. The trash talking, the disrespect. I mean, from the media coach, I wasn't there, so I don't know how true it was. Because I went to a playoff. I was supposed to go to the playoff game that week, and I got stranded because of a snowstorm, so I wasn't able to get back to go to the Celebration Bowl that year. So I was supposed to be in North Dakota State, and we had that snowstorm. But Trey Oliver said that the media left the press conference room after Prom's press conference, and he had less media in the room than before. And he was like, "Yeah, I just noted in my head, and I took that as a disrespect." And then he was like, "Because they weren't ready to exit the tunnel, they delayed our intro because they wanted the intro to be perfect." And I was like, all those little things. The last coach you want to do that against is Trey Oliver, because he was fuming on the sideline, coach. You
Oh,
know
hands
it.
out. And then the scheme is already the scheme, and then you add fuel to the fire, and then um, you're hoping that your kids can meet that. But their kid, at the end of the day, they're kids. You said we got there. If I can, games on Saturday, we got there like Thursday. Um, and I don't know how true it is. If they get there on Wednesday and you give those kids a free day to run the city in Atlanta, you're asking for problems. Uh, and then the distractions leading up to that. If you remember, after the SWAC championship game, there was a whole to
No,
do about the,
I was there with
so it
that.
started then. You know what I mean? It started then, and then it just kind of goes. It just snowballed, I think, until they really thought they were just going to walk out there and beat that team, not realizing that that team was pretty good and was hungry.
I will say this, man. We'll end it here, man, because we did 2 hours on the Saturday morning, man. And I know we both want to get to the golf course, and we're going to get that together. We might have to put together like a
I've been drinking a lot of
Bluebloods golf
Gatorade.
tournament, man, and
Oh
raise
yeah,
some
we got
money
to do it.
and raise some money for something, man. Find an organization to raise some money for. Do a fundraiser golf tournament. And invite all you guys, all the supporters of the show can come, man. All the other media in this space, but we appreciate you guys, man. Um, Hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe.
Subscribe.
Um, Me and Coach are working on a big guest for next week. A very, very big guest, head coach of the MEAC. Will announce that as a later date. Let you guys mind wander on that about who's coming on the show. Player interviews are about to kick up. Me and Timothy deep into conference previews, man. We've already done the Big Sky. Big South OVC drops on Monday, and we're recording the CAA this weekend. You can check out the website, si.com/college/FCS for all the preview content as we work through every single FCS conference. We're going to have individualized team previews for every single team in the FCS, man. You can't get that content anywhere else, man. Shout out to Timothy for helping me put that together. But me and Coach will be back next week. Live streams, potential head coach interview, player interviews kicking up soon, man. So make sure to stay tuned for all that. But for Coach Fred, for myself, for the Blue Bloods FCS Football Central, man, we out for right now.